Welcome to a very special Make It Happen episode. I have wanted to have Martha Beck on my show since I first started podcasting back in 2013, and I'm so happy that we were finally able to make it happen. She was gracious and kind and provided a ton of value that you're going to get as you watch and learn about different ways to show up and be more authentic in your life, to be more in tune with the things that you need, and for you to really get personal about how you want to approach and progress in 2022 and beyond. This episode is juicy and soulful, and I am so glad that you're here. Also, stay tuned for my favorite things and one of my Pick My Brain questions that I think will be just as interesting as today's conversation. Welcome to Make It Happen. For today's Pick My Brain, we have a great question. It comes from, I'm just making sure I've got the right name, Karen Snavely, who I met at a speaking engagement, and she sent me this question, which I think is a really great question to ask. She says, since my faith is a big part of who I am, will posting anything about my faith, maybe even not too aggressively, hurt my business? And this is a really interesting question, and I get this question a lot. It's also something that I think about on a regular basis. I'm a very spiritual person. I have a religion that I'm a fan of and that I participate in. And yet at the same time, I also know that my religious beliefs, I don't want to get in the way of the other work that I am here on this earth to do. And so it's been a really delicate balance for me to figure out where I put things in and when I don't. And because I like to verbalize and vocalize a lot of my thoughts, I knew that if it wasn't super appropriate to share everything on my business channels, that I needed some place to do it. So what I did was I separated out my spiritual side. And so I have Spiritual Musings, a spiritual podcast that is completely separate. You can find it separately if that's of interest to you at Sunshine in the Middle. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and also have a podcast there and a book that will be coming out. I just knew that I didn't want anyone to not hear the other things that I had to say because they felt uncomfortable with my religious beliefs. And yet I watch people intermingle them all the time. You'll hear me from time to time mention a higher power or God, like we talked about on this episode with Martha Beck that you're about to see. And yet at the same time, there are also times where I don't mention it depending. And I have some speaking contracts where they will give me a list of all the things I can't say, and many religious thoughts and words are included on that list. So I'm always careful to make sure that I'm following the outlet that I'm in or on if they have specific rules. And then on my personal platforms, I have the ability to be able to do what I need to do. In your particular case, you have to decide. I know a lot of people who are building businesses with spiritual and thoughts about God or even Jesus Christ as a huge part of their platform. They've made a decision that that is part of their brand. And I've also watched people who have chosen to keep those things separate. I think you have to do what's right for you, and you have to tune into your audience, and also know that if you do make the decision either way, that you might lose some people, and that's okay. As long as you are clear about who your audience is, as long as you are clear about how you're showing up and doing what's right for you in this world, and as long as you are clear about what you're selling. Because I think one of the reasons why it comes into conflict is because people will feel like they aren't exactly sure what it is that you're trying to offer or do for them outside of your business. Are you trying to share your beliefs? Are you trying to convert people to your beliefs? And if that feels in confusion, then sometimes the offer that you're making on your business could be mixed or meddled. And yet at the same time, I watch business owners all the time integrate that as part of who they are and what they do because they can't keep them separate, and they know it's something that they need to share. I know that the answer that I'm giving you is not definitive, but I just want you to know that you can explore either way and make the decision that's right for you and move forward with confidence, knowing that you have tuned in, checked it out, and decided what is right as you move forward. I'm cheering you on as you consider this because I know that it will take some soulful investigation, and I also know at the end it'll be worth every minute of time as you consider. And please let me know what you decide because I would love to hear and follow along. If you have a question that you'd like to submit to Pick My Brain, you can send it to me at michelle@speakmichelle.com. You can also find me on your favorite social media platforms and send questions into me just like she did through Instagram or Facebook. I cannot wait to see what questions you have next and look forward to having you pick my brain. Hello and welcome to this very special episode of the Make It Happen Show. I am your host, Michelle McCullough, and today we are joined by someone I have been following for the greater part of my life as I looked back about all of these experiences. We have Martha Beck with us today, and I'm going to share with you a little formal bio of her, because if you're new to Martha Beck, which if you've been living under a rock, that would be the only reason why you might. But there are some people who may have not heard about you, and so I'm going to share this to start. But
I'm very well known among people who've heard of me.
see, and you're very well known among me for sure. But Dr. Martha Beck is a New York Times bestselling author, life coach, and speaker. She holds 3 Harvard degrees in social science, and Oprah Winfrey has called her one of the smartest women I know. I would add to that as well. Martha is a passionate and engaging teacher known for her unique combination of science, humor, and spirituality. Look at her, shake her head. And her newest book, The Way of Integrity, Finding the Path to Your True Self, was an instant New York Times bestseller. Martha, welcome to Make It Happen.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thanks to anybody who's listening. It is my honor.
I love it so much. I'm so glad that you're here. It is truly an honor for me. And I was sharing with Dr. Beck before the show about how long I have followed her. Like from the very beginnings, I think she was probably my very first time I heard the words life coach on an Oprah Winfrey show. And so I would love to start there a little bit. You still claim the title of life coach, which some people are like, I can't say that word anymore. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about, no, you can, everyone can,
okay.
You can. But I love that you still claim that. I love that's still a part of what you do, and it would be easy for it to be, hey, I'm a professor. Hey, I'm an author. Hey, I'm something else, because I still follow you and feel like even though remotely I get life coaching from you, but I'd love for you to talk about why you feel like that is so important. So someone who may be curious about what that actually means, and how do you love the way that this shows up for people to help them live their best lives?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not the first image that comes to most people's minds is sort of another version of the famous motivational speaker, right? Like, remember the guy on Saturday Night Live who used to scream at kids, you'll end up living in a van down by the river. I've been to a lot of those screamy motivational speakers. It's not really my cup of tea, but that's what a lot of people have in their minds. That's not what I do. What I do, I was a professor. I was a sociology professor and then a business school professor. And what I was most interested in was teaching people not just how to do a specific type of business or how to understand a certain type of relationship, but how to improve their own lives. It was very boring to me to just sit and talk about dead scholars. I wanted active, vibrant social science that made people's lives work better. So that was my approach. And then my students at the business school where I was teaching started asking me to just do seminars or work with them one-on-one. And I was like, what the heck is this? All right. I'm not a therapist, right? They were like, no, we don't need therapy. We just want help. I was like, okay, that makes sense, because the old institutions that used to guide people's behavior, like religion, like ethnicity, like even national cultures, they've all blended now because the world is so intercommunicative, right? So they say the woman who has one watch always knows what time it is. The woman who has 2 watches is never sure. If you've got 2 frames of reference, you're like, which one's right? And you need guidance. And it's not therapy, and it's not really anything that was out there. So I just started working with these students. I wrote a book that I could give them to say, look, you don't have to talk to me anymore. It's all in the book. Now, please go away, because I'm very introverted. And it backfired and more people came. And then I actually read in USA Today. I was getting on a plane and I had a USA Today, and there I was listed as one of the best known life coaches in the country. And I was like, I've never even heard that phrase. But I'm like, okay, yeah, it works. It works. I'll go with that. It sounds a little cheesy, but I'll go with that. So my way of doing it is different from, I think, anybody else's way of doing it. But it's just support and guidance for people who are trying to find their way through life.
I love that. And it's interesting because shortly thereafter, I worked for a boss. His name was Dan Matheson, and I've shared with him this story, so I can share his first and last name on the show. But he told me he had a life coach. And I remember laughing out loud because
if you knew Dan Matheson, there are lots of people, lots of different personalities, but he was, by all intents and purposes, in control. Like he wasn't an out of control being. He pressed his shirts every morning. His hair was perfect. He had goals. Like he was moving forward. And I thought, if Dan Matheson needs a life coach, the rest of us are screwed. And I remember like getting the guts up to say to him, why do you need a life coach? Like, what is it that you do? And he said, my goals are important enough to me that I want to make sure I'm accountable to someone and that someone shows me the things that I'm not seeing.
Yeah.
And since then, I thought that is a really great summary of what a life coach can do. And to this day, I do life coaching. I do business coaching as well, but I still also find a coach for me. And so I just got a new contract. I have a new coach because I always want to grow and develop. And I want those same things. I want to hit and be accountable to my goals. And I also want someone to say, hey, here's something you may not be seeing. Yeah. And so I love that. What do you see different or even the same? What are some of your core principles for someone who's watching or listening that if they're not quite ready for a life coach or if they're just thinking through, do you have some self-life coaching tips that might get someone through a new year?
Oh, yeah. Every single one of my books is like, here, take this, go. The first thing I would say is my particular philosophy is that you already have everything, all the instructions and all the motivation and all the guidance is already within you. I believe in destiny, and I believe that we know our own destiny and no one else can know it for us. I believe instead of like, you're born with potential and you try to develop it, you're born small and you try to get bigger and more powerful. I share the Asian perspective that what's within you is perfect. And as you go through life, you sort of muddy, like getting mud on the clarity that is at the core of your being. And so what I do is not try to build people up, but try to help them drop what is keeping them from seeing their own path. There's a line in the Chinese Tao Te Ching that says in the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the pursuit of the way or awakening, every day something is dropped. So my whole focus is on helping people drop what they may have learned from trauma or socialization so that they can access this intense vision of their own destiny that is basically the path to their right life. And so what they're not seeing is it's the same thing. I want them to see what they're not seeing, but my belief is it's right there. It never went anywhere, and you always have access to it.
I think that is so powerful. And I think that when I finally found somebody who reminded me of that, right, something I already knew, I stopped gauging my worth based off of accolades or results or something else, and recognized that who I am and my, using your terms, destiny doesn't change by the things that I do. It just changes by who I'm trying to be. And just getting in tune and focusing on who is already in here and the experiences that I already have rather than looking outward to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other thoughts? I don't want to cut you off. Was there something else?
Just one thing is I came to this conclusion in kind of an unusual way. I was doing my doctoral dissertation, and I was looking at women who felt conflicted in their roles and didn't know what to do. And what I found, I had to go a long way through sociological literature to find a way out for people who had lost their sense of identity. When I did find it, it was in cultures that had been like traditional cultures that were overrun by colonialization or something. And they didn't know what to do with their lives, these indigenous people. And what would happen is they would go to a behavior that wasn't social. They would go by themselves alone out into the wilderness until they found what was true for them in their own hearts. And these people often started new cultures. They were people who did unusual things that had never been done before. And I actually think we're in a time in history when we need to do things that have never been done before, because it's so confusing, so challenging, and so dire. Like there are some dire circumstances around us, folks, if you haven't noticed. And so there's a mystical quality to that, going out into the wilderness to find your own answers. And that mysticism is at the core of the way I teach and the way I coach. It really actually is a spiritual practice for me. And I think that it's different. That's really different from the whole van down by the river scenario, right?
Right.
So that's my jam. And those are the people that tend to come to my program.
I love that distinction and that reminder that, and I think that you also speak to, even just in the historical of what you found, we do so much involving what other people think, what other people are doing, what other people, like social media overruns our lives.
Oh yeah.
And the influence, and what you shared there was the reminder that, hey, what most of us just need is some time alone and some time for reflection, and then being able to come back and say, okay, if I were to let go of some of these outside expectations and what truly matters to me, then from there you can rebuild and seek help and get guidance that will take you in the right direction, rather than, and at least acknowledging the places where you might have veered off course for your own personal destiny.
Well, I do that every day. And I think we do need to do that every day. We need to not just go by ourselves alone, but it's one thing to sit in a room by yourself fretting and nervous or writing goals or whatever. It's another thing to wait, as again, the Tao Te Ching says, until the mud has settled and the water is clear. If you can get a practice of becoming still, then going by yourself will sort of give you access to this spring that you can drink from every single day. And that's kind of a core practice. And I think you have to develop some kind of core practice these days, because the society around you is so chaotic and changeable, and it doesn't know what you need or what your destiny is anyway. So that going by yourself, it's not just a one-time thing, it's a daily practice.
For sure. And I think that's a good reminder for each of us too, because sometimes we'll say, oh, well, I will go once a year and I'll do this, or I'll go once a month and I'll do that. But some of the daily quieting might be just the thing that saves us.
Ideally, it would be all day, every day. All day, every day. I'm so still inside that whether I'm in a room with other people or not, what most of my attention is on what's expressing itself through the clearest still center of my consciousness. I know it all starts to sound a little airy-fairy, but it kind of is for me.
Well, and I think that's okay. People will say it's a little woo-woo, but sometimes I think we need a little woo-woo. There's so much noise that the quiet and the still and the recentering is really sometimes where the magic can be.
Well, I think when you get on that line of your destiny, magical things start happening to you. And so many of them happen that it becomes undeniable. At a certain point, it becomes statistically so improbable that it actually wouldn't be scientific to say it was a random accident. So, it's that quality of being able to still the self and go inside and sort of be a channel for truth. Ooh, I'm using all these words like channel. The woo-woo-ness of it is actually so practical. It's just outside what our culture sees as practical. And I wrote this last book called The Way of Integrity because I was tired of people calling me woo-woo. And I just wanted to be absolutely true to the facts of my life, like the scientific, physical facts of my life. And so I went on this integrity cleanse where I tried not to even have a facial expression that didn't express what was true for me. And I'm actually still on that. But I wrote this book, and what happened is the more pragmatic and scientific I got, the more magic happened in my life, to the point where it just got ridiculous. And I actually think that's true for all of us. You get true, it goes woo-woo. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And not to be afraid of that, and to embrace that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the other thing that I wanted to chat with you about today, there's a handful, we'll see where our time goes, but I had a profound experience when I was in college. I was actually attending Dixie College in Southern Utah. And I remember it being 4:00 in the afternoon, and I turned on to watch you on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And so this is where I'm going to tell you what happened, and you can correct my false 2-decade memory. And then we can also build on the conversation, because even if it is a false memory, there's still some good in it, I think.
Sure.
But I remember sitting sitting and watching, and you were sitting on the couch with Oprah. There was a conversation on happiness and what really brings in true happiness, and that you had done some interviewing, or that you found a study with high school or college students. And through the course of the interviews, there were a number of questions, and there were some individuals that you would ask a question to, and the answer became, "My mother loved life." And I remember you expounding on that and talking about how, as adults, whether we're parents or not, the ability that we have to affect the happiness of the next generation. But then two important things happened to me. The first was an acknowledgement that I was lucky enough to be raised by someone like that. I don't know why I'm crying, but my mother was a very happy individual, is still a very happy individual, despite her personal challenges, and had many reasons to be frustrated or down. But if I could say the same thing, I could say my mother loved life, and that was a gift to me. Yeah. But then the second thing that happened was I made a commitment that my kids could say the same thing about me. And so I actually think of you all the time. I think about, even in those moments that are hard and tricky, I'm like, how can I still love life in this moment? It doesn't have to be easy. It doesn't have to be perfect, but how do I love life and show my kids that despite challenges, that there is good that can be had here? So first, you can correct my memory, but then also would love to have you just share and expound on the contagiousness of happiness, but also how we can be truly happy even in the midst of challenge.
Great. Yeah, I remember doing that, all those interviews. And what I found some people that were truly happy, and I quizzed them about all kinds of things. And one of the things that I heard over and over again from people everywhere was, "My mother loved me. I know she loved me." These were people who were not so happy. "I know my mother loved me, but her life was so awful, or she couldn't do what she wanted, or whatever it was." And the people who were really happy did not say, "My mother loved me." They said, as you correctly recall, "My mother loved life." And that really stood out to me. And so I started looking at the effect, and now there's tremendous amount of research done on it because of positive psychology. People have found in many studies that the effect of happiness, of calm in particular, not manic happiness, not excitability, but quiet, inner quiet and peace, which translates to happiness. It's very powerfully contagious, to the point where if you put three strangers in a room, in this one study, they put three people at a time in these rooms, and they wired up their brains and their hearts to see what was going on inside, fMRIs. And they just sat there for 20 minutes without saying anything to each other, these strangers. But within 20 minutes, the brain patterns, the electrical patterns in the brain, and the heart patterns of all three people would have moved to the same pattern as the calmest person in the room. And this is a phenomenon called entrainment. And it's actually physics. It happens if you put grandfather clocks in a room and they all have pendulums swinging at different times. After a day or so, all the clocks will be in perfect unison. And this happens with people who are really calm. And some people can even, when I go to South Africa, people call it the Mandela effect, that when he was there, you could feel this pool of quiet and of joy that was in him. And that goes to what you were saying about misery and how you can love life even in the middle of it. I mean, Mandela spent 27 years in a horrible, freezing cold, tiny little cell. And in that time, he went from an angry civil rights activist to pretty much an enlightened being, as far as I can tell. He developed this ability to find his still center in the middle, even of imprisonment and incredible injustice. And when he came out, he was just that radiance of true self that I think lies at the core of each of us. He stripped off so many illusions. He dropped so much suffering. He'd come to love life at Robben Island in that tiny little cell. And because of that, people could feel his energy, and he calmed a country that was expected to go into total bloodshed because of the power of his ability to be his true self. And there's no difference between that and loving life. Even if people go through ordeals, the famous Jesus, you may have heard of Jesus, he's a person. And if you buy into the idea that he was perfect and that he was setting an example for all of us, he went through this hideous, horrible execution at the end of his life and was still a loving, gentle, forgiving being even then. So yeah, we can go through terrible things. And if we remain true to ourselves and we find the peace in our cores, we not only can love life, even in its pain and bitterness, but we become this entrainer for other people so that they begin to love their own lives.
Mm. One of my favorite subjects and conversations is on happiness. And whether partly because of this experience, the way I was raised and everything else. And I think that, I've been accused to have fake happiness, which means that I need to work on and I'm intrigued by your making sure all of my facial expressions match exactly how I feel and not overdoing or underdoing any of it. But I also think that sometimes happiness gets a bad rap these days, and that people or that it's a superficial emotion. What are some practices that you have in place that help you find that peace and that joy in your life that somebody else might be able to take and use like a tool?
Sure. There's really just one, and I use it over and over again. And I call it integrity in this last book. Integrity simply means to be whole, one thing intact. If you divide, like if an airplane is in perfect structural integrity, all its parts work as a single unit. But if it breaks apart, that's called duplicity. You become two things, or multiplicity, many things, and they're not working together. The plane loses structural integrity and it may not take off, or it may crash or whatever. So our lives are the same way. The one thing we need to be in a continuously good state is the alignment of all the parts of ourselves that can recognize truth. So the body recognizes truth and will relax when it feels the truth. Like when you say something that's deeply true, you can feel your muscles relaxing. And when you say something that's a lie, I have clients say, I love to vomit, and just notice that they get weaker, they get tight, the body can't lie very well. It loves the truth. The heart experiences the truth as an opening and a moving toward the world and other people. The soul recognizes truth by the feeling of freedom. So the Buddha said, whenever you find the sea, you can tell that it's the ocean, no matter what it looks like, because the ocean always tastes of salt. And wherever you find enlightenment or truth, you will recognize it because it always tastes of freedom. So he didn't say happiness, he said freedom. That's the soul. And then the mind recognizes truth with that click of, oh yeah, the math works, that tracks. So what you have to do to be in a good space in any situation is integrity. What am I feeling? Body, heart, mind, and soul. What do I know for sure, as to use Oprah's phrase? And it could be, okay, for example, I'm in the wrong marriage, the wrong job. I really need to change everything. And if I don't, I'll get horribly sick and die. Okay. If that's true, there will be more peace and more deeply felt contentment in acknowledging it than in pretending that you're happy when you're not. So it really is about the truth. And the one thing, I'll give you an example for anybody who's listening or watching, and I want you to do it, Michelle, to see how it feels. Super simple. Notice what happens in your body when you say something like, I am meant to be a domestic servant or a plumber or something. Just say that and notice when you say that, what happens in your body, heart, mind, soul.
You want me to say it right now?
Yeah, just like, you don't have to say it out loud, but say it like, I'm meant to be a plumber.
I'm meant to be a plumber.
You sound happy. How does it feel?
It doesn't feel great. It just doesn't feel great.
Okay. If your face were to mirror exactly what you're feeling when you say I'm meant to be a plumber, what would it look like? Because you're smiling brightly now.
I'm uncomfortable. And so I'm finding myself going, oh. But
okay, now that face,
like,
yeah, you kind of grimaced, and that's your body really giving expression to what's going on for real underneath. Now try this. Say to yourself or out loud, I am meant to live in peace. I am meant to live in peace. So repeat that and see how it lands in your body, heart, mind, soul.
I am meant to live in peace.
How does your whole sense of self respond to that statement?
Like a big, deep exhale.
Right. Yeah, home. The place you've come home to is the truth. Now that feeling is always available to you. You can always go home. And being home is a good feeling, even if the truth that gets you there is saying, I've got to make big changes, or wow, I need to stop smoking, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. When you connect with that integrity, you're home. Now, as regards the magical part of life, as I was saying, I just started doing studies of integrity to find out how people could stay in the truth. And I found that statement, I am meant to live in peace, brought everyone into a state of resonance. Even I talked to prisoners, I talked to homeless people, I talked to people who were mentally ill, like really hard cases, that always brought them home. And if you go into peace, it's as if God or whatever you believe in, the universe, has been answering every desire of your heart your entire life, and always saying yes to everything you really want, and always sending it to you immediately. But it always goes to your real home address, which is peace. Mm-hmm. And only by going to peace will these things start to show up in your physical reality. If you're not in peace, you can't ever reach them. So peace is the way to go home in any moment, and you do it by telling the truth and being in integrity. The moment you're there, all the magic of the universe starts working on your behalf. And the moment you lose peace, you can feel the wonkiness, and you need to just find space, get back in, realign, know what is true, and live by that truth, and nothing can damage you at that point.
Mm. I think that's so helpful. I think that we often discount sometimes how easy it is to change our thoughts and feelings just by going quiet and asking ourselves, or like you said, one statement, what that looks like.
Yeah.
And I need that example and that reminder too, that I can say, I am meant to have peace, or I'm meant to be peace, whatever that looks like, and how that can change.
Yeah.
We often tell ourselves different stories. So we have to change the stories that we tell.
Exactly. If you've got a story in your head that's making you miserable, the question is that true? Am I sure it's true? If it's not true and you believe it, it will make you miserable, because at some level, you know what the deeper part of you believes is true. So if you believe, for example, I'm not a good person, or I have a long way to go before I'm okay, or something like that, deep inside you, you know you're already okay. In your essence, you've never been anything else. You've never been anything but a pure soul, and life sort of happens around that. But we are all innocent at the core, I believe. And if we believe otherwise, we have to go in after that thought and really examine it, because unless we let it go, we can't get to the truth, which is our home, same as peace. And dropping those thoughts, the thoughts that aren't true, is a massive step toward happiness.
Amen. Thank you for that. I want to ask you, I'm looking at the clock thinking, holy cow, our time is going by so quickly. I could talk to you for days probably and still not cover all of the things. But I love this question. And so perhaps we end here, but then if there's anything else you'd like to say to wrap up that we didn't cover, what would you say to people whose lives aren't terrible, but they're not exactly what they want them to be? And maybe they're people who feel like they've done everything like they were supposed to, and they were checking boxes, but things just aren't quite working as they expected, or the plan that they had in their mind isn't quite coming to fruition. What would you say to them?
I actually talk a lot about this in the book, The Way of Integrity. The book is based on Dante's Divine Comedy. And the beginning of that poem is, Dante says, in the middle of my life, I came to myself in a dark wood, and I'd lost my way, couldn't find my way back, didn't know how I got there or how to get out. And that, I call it dark wood of, he calls it the dark wood of error. And I say that we have dark wood of error syndrome when we feel 6 things. One is a loss of a sense of purpose. if you're really, really in your integrity, the sense of purpose and joy and meaning in your life is very vivid and acute. And you jump out of bed, you're excited to greet every day. Second thing is your moods. If your moods are off, that means there's a signal in there that somewhere you're not doing or believing what's true for you. Third thing is that you get physical symptoms. You start to get sick a lot. You start to get aches and pains. You may develop an autoimmune disease like I did. So then if you don't get back on track, you'll get sicker and sicker. Then it affects your relationships poorly, it affects your career badly. And then finally, it could land you in an addiction, which will take you all the way to the worst parts of the dark wood of error. Typically, people in the dark wood of error, if you ask them how they are, they'll say, I'm fine. How's your life? It's fine. How's your marriage? It's fine. How's your job? Oh, it's fine. If they don't say, holy crap, it's amazing, they're not actually living on that razor's line of the truth that's accessible to all of us. So in Dante's case, the only way out is he has to go through hell. He has to go and look at all his inner demons and let them all go. And then he has to climb this mountain, which for me, it's a metaphor of living the truth that you know in your mind. So if you know your job's not great, but you keep going to it, you're not living the truth that you're admitting. And if you start to live your whole truth, then you get to a place that Dante calls paradise, where you stop having to strive to be happy. You stop having to strive to find or create your destiny. It seems almost to be done through you by the joyful consciousness of the divine itself, of which I believe all of us are just a part. We're all part of the universe. And as you get closer and closer to your truth, the whole universe starts to flow through you and bring you into a life that's not just fine, it's incredible. And it can happen to you in a tiny little cell. It can happen to you in a COVID lockdown. It can happen to you in a flash. It can happen to you over 20 years of struggle. But don't stop until you've found it, because that's why you're here, to find that and to live it. And that's all I have to say about that.
I thought it was awesome. Incredible. Thank you so much. I think that, there are so many people that I know that would say, like you said, that their lives are fine or that their life is even good or whatever, but it's not great. It's not fantastic. And I want to wake them all up and say, hey, let's lead our absolute best lives and love it. Yeah. And what can we do to make that better? So I love your thoughts there. And I think it's helpful. Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up? No,
just, don't expect that it will be easy. We're not saying it's easy. It is so super hard.
It's work.
But it's hard in the way it's a playful hardness. It's hard the way, playing football is hard. Playing the piano well is hard, but it's still play. So don't settle for fine and don't expect life to be easy if you set out to live your whole truth, but you can expect it to be amazing. You'll be in peace and you'll be in amazement. And the combination of those things is awe. You will live in awe every day of your life as your real destiny reveals itself to you.
Thank you. And we will end on that. I won't even add to it because it was incredible. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for being part of our program. I honor you and all the work that you've done and your contributions in the world. We will share additional pieces about Martha in the show notes, and including the links to her latest book and how you can find and follow her on social media.
Thank you so much for inviting me on the show and for doing all the great, wonderful stuff that you're doing back in my old stomping grounds of Provo.
It's interesting how life has weird intersections, and it's great. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Okay, it's time for a few of my favorite things. Now, I have a friend who, for 2 times I saw her back to back, her name is Carrie. She was like, Michelle, you have to buy yourself a onesie. And I was like, no way. I am not a onesie kind of gal. She kept talking about them so persistently that I went on the World Wide Web, finally bought one, got it home, and I am so glad that I actually bought two. Okay, I bought a red one for Christmas time, and I bought a blue one because blue is my favorite color. Now, what you need to know about the one piece, okay? When you go there, you're gonna judge me a little for how much they were and that I bought two, okay? But I need you to know and tell yourself that it costs about the same price as you would get a full body hoodie. I mean, this is a full body hoodie. It is sweatshirt material. It is warm. It's the perfect for lounging around my house. I mean, it's cheaper than if Disneyland were to offer a full body hoodie, okay? But it's certainly more expensive than if Walmart were to offer a full body hoodie. But what I love about it is I love how comfy it is. There are still pockets so I can roam about my house with my phone and anything else that I need. It keeps me super warm. I think it's designed for people who are serious outdoorsy people because you can zip it up over your face and sleep with it. I mean, it looks interesting. Notice that I didn't show you the favorite things with this on me. You can just imagine it. It is not doing me any favors, okay? It does my friend Carrie lots of favors. She looks fantastic, but I will tell you that yesterday I wore my onesie, my red onesie out of the house to the 7-Eleven. And I thought for sure I would see humans I know, and I did not. They missed out, okay? But you won't because I am putting the link below for one piece. I do not make a single penny if you get one, but I would love it if you sent me a picture, okay? We can be friends. Favorite thing number 2. I am a huge fan of my Dr. Pepper lip smackers, okay? Which really is just, it actually provides a little bit of tint and is fantastic. And I should have brought one because it truly is one of my favorite things. But if I'm going for real nourishment when my lips are chapped, especially in the winter, it is Burt's Bees. I love the original and I love coconut and pear. It's my favorite. The mango I don't love as much, but they come in 2 packs. So it's a twofer. But the coconut and pear is fantastic. I just feel like this gets the job done when it's dry and my lips are chapped. Burt's Bees, coconut and pear. I'm giving one of these away. Stay tuned. I'm going to tell you how you can get one. Okay. Also, I need to tell you about Boombox Candy, and I can't believe it took me this long to tell you, but this is a fun small business owner, rock star mom who is just making a side hustle, and I found her through a website, through a group on Facebook, and I'm so glad that I did. She does fun gummy charcuterie, like different themes. I got one for my son that was a shark tank. This one is like they're unicorn gummies, and they're just look how cute that is. I mean, I could probably buy all of these things for way less if I knew where to find them all, which I can't. But the way that it's put together, the package, the brand, I love everything about Boombox Candy. I am a fan for life. I love to give these to clients. I gave a ton away during the holidays. She had fun themed different gummies, and you can find them. They make great gifts, great corporate gifts. So Boombox Candy is for you. I'm also giving away a Boombox Candy. I'm gonna give you a gift certificate so you can pick whichever one is right for you. It'll come straight to your door. If you go to Instagram at Speak Michelle, you will find these 2 items. Go ahead and enter. Now, of course, I know this is a podcast and it is evergreen. And if you're listening to this in a few months, I'm sorry you missed out, but don't worry. We do lots of giveaways. So stick around. This one is happening on Instagram at Speak Michelle. Make sure you like and comment on this particular post, and all the details are there about how you can win a few of my favorite things. I hope you loved today's interview with Martha Beck. She provided me a lot of soulful nuggets and insights that I keep thinking about and I cannot wait to implement as I show up to become the person that I want to be the most. As life coaching has evolved and changed over the years, foundational principles and fundamentals will always be there to help you become your best self. At Make It Happen, we're committed to helping you grow and thrive, both personally and professionally. And today's episode hopefully will give you some insights to do that. I hope that you're following me on your favorite social media channel. This week, I'll be sharing some extra tips and tricks through Instagram on the subjects that we're talking about. So find me at Speak Michelle. We're also giving away a special prize on Instagram with a few of my favorite things. So find us there. And as always, we're always grateful for your reviews. Please leave a review so that other people can find it. And we wish you the best as you carry on and make it happen.